Today we have a little bit of YouTube drama. I'm not a big friend of drama, but Tom Nash, a great YouTuber, he covers finance and markets, made a claim or presented a theory about the Iran war. That is a very important theory, and I unfortunately have to show you guys that Tom is in this case wrong. Now, I think Tom is great, he's very smart, he has a lot of great insights, but in this specific area or in this specific case, he is wrong. I want to just provide you with an overview here. It is very important. I'm not doing this to be annoying. I'm doing that to clarify what is really going on or what is not going on. So what did Tom actually say? I will make it very quick because some of you requested this on X. Tom said in his video that the whole Iran war is not about Israel. It's not about American imperialism. It's not about Iran and liberating the people of Iran. It's about the money, and we have to follow the money. Now, so far, it's an interesting theory. I think in this specific case, it's probably not totally accurate. Tom is making the case that when you look through oil, the oil flows on the globe. And when you see the number one adversary globally of the United States, which is China, of course, not Iran, that China is heavily dependent on Venezuelan and Iranian oil. And Tom makes the point here, as you can see, that 2/3 of Chinese supply of oil, crude oil, comes from Iran and Venezuela, and he implies a little bit Russia supplies the other 30% or 33%. Now, I have multiple points here. Number one, Tom is actually wrong. It is not 2/3. And we need to also look at the total energy supply China receives from Iran and Venezuela. So one question is, what is the total share of Venezuelan and Iranian oil that Trump just knocked out from the supply for China? Tom is correct on that. What is the total percentage share of Iranian and Venezuelan oil of all of Chinese oil imports or Chinese oil in general? But the second and also important question is, what is the total share of Iranian and Venezuelan oil of the total Chinese energy supply? Two different questions, and on both, Tom is unfortunately wrong. So let's look at this. Here is my source, very important source, extremely reliable source. It is the US Energy Information Administration. So that is an official US government entity that does this analysis. And as you can see here, very clearly, Iran is responsible for 11% of Chinese crude oil imports. And Venezuela is responsible for only 2%. So in total, this is 13%. There are some other, sources and triangulations we can do here that actually end up at 18%. So it depends. 18% is already stretched, but it is far from 66%. Tom said 2/3 are supplied by Iran and Venezuela. Now that is totally wrong. It is under 20%, something between 13 and 18% in 2025. So this is very accurate recent data. 13.4% from Iran and 4 to 4.5% from Venezuela. So there is a little bit of a difference between these numbers and these numbers. Here, what you see, if you use the broader 2024 EIA country source table instead of 2025, the number is even lower. So this is 2024, and the 2025 numbers are 18%. So 13% in 2024 and 70 to 18% last year. So it was going up. Okay. But here's another very important point. So number one, 18% is clearly not 66%. 18% of total imports. Okay, but here's the important thing. 18% combined. Here's the important thing that we really need to understand. That gives us a clear understanding that this whole theory that the Iran war and the crazy expenses that the US is now engaging in, Rand Paul just showed and published something on X that shows that the US is spending roughly $1 billion per day on this war. $41 million per hour is being spent on this war. So 1 billion a day, 30 days, 30 billion. The cost might even go up if the attacks have to get ramped up. If we deploy ground troops, I mean, then it's game over anyway for the United States. So it is a very, very bad situation. And to justify that with the impact on China, as we now see, is completely impossible, because here this table, what that table shows you is the following. Let's zoom in a little bit. What I did here is energy source, coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear, hydropower, other domestic low carbon renewables, including solar. If you look at the total percent of China energy mix, coal is 60.9%. Oil is only 18% of the energy mix in China is oil. 7.9% is natural gas, 2.8% nuclear, 2.6% hydropower, 7.5% solar, and others. You see, China is tremendously dependent on coal. Okay, but when you look at where this comes from, what is domestic and what is foreign, where is China actually dependent on an international supply chain? Not in coal. 90% of coal comes from inside China. That is why China is focused so much on coal plants, because it creates energy independence. And that is why China is building coal plants like crazy, in case you didn't notice. That's so funny when like little European countries and cities want to do climate change protection, right? And they shut down their local economies, like Germany, that makes up less than 2% of the global CO2 emissions. So Germany destroys its economy, while China literally builds more coal plants per year than the total install base of Germany every single year. So it's very idiotic on the climate change delusion side, what Europe is doing. When you see these numbers, China is massively building out its coal because it wants to be energy independent. You will see where this is going in a second. Oil. Of course, oil is the number one weakness of China. 72% of oil is imported and only 27% is domestically produced. Okay? And natural gas, 56%, so it's roughly half-half. Nuclear is actually mostly imported, interesting enough, but it's only 2.8%. Then hydropower is 100% domestic, and the other renewables, of course, 100% domestic. And now we get to column number 5. And column number 5 tells you what is the net foreign dependence as a percentage of global energy, of total energy in China. So that column shows you what total percentage of Chinese energy out of 100% of energy that they're using is actually dependent on foreign supply chains. Okay? So if all the foreign oil would be choked off from China, it would lose 13% of its energy, which is pretty significant, but it's 13%, right? They still would have 87% left. If all the nuclear energy from foreign countries would be choked off, they would only lose 1.87%. If all the coal would be choked off that is imported, they would lose 6.27%, roughly half of the oil. So in total, China is actually energy dependent on foreign imports for 24.85% of its total energy supply, which is actually much less than people would assume. And only 13%, only 13% of that is dependence on oil imports. But now if you multiply that with the Venezuelan and Iranian number of 18% of the imported oil, here is the number that matters and why Tom is so wrong. Let me zoom this in very large. Okay, China's dependency on Venezuela and Iran is 1.73% of its total energy. So now that Iran is out of the picture, Venezuela is out of the picture, what Trump achieved with many tens of billions by now in costs for this war is to remove 1.73% of Chinese energy supply. That is not a lot, just to make that clear. That is not a lot, and that does not justify putting that level of risk on the table for Trump. Because what Trump is doing there is enormously risky. That's why I'm betting on him making a taco. Trump always chickens out, taco. I'm betting pretty strongly on this war being over soon, because under rational circumstances, Trump, Vance, and Rubio cannot afford this war. That is my conviction. And if you have Israel, Israel derangement syndrome, right? There's TDS, there's Elon derangement syndrome, there's Israel derangement syndrome. The interesting thing about Israel derangement syndrome, very different from Trump and Elon derangement syndrome, is that Israel derangement syndrome can apply to both sides. Israel fans who often have that, they completely have a meltdown when you talk about Israel. They think you're an anti-Semite. In the other side, the Israel haters, if you say anything about Israel or Palestine, they have a meltdown. They think you're a Zionist. I'm neither one. I just don't care. I care about delivering to you guys my take on geopolitics and the markets. So the bottom line here is that this war is not good. And how do we generate alpha from the war? By placing a bet. And my bet, even though sometimes I'm shaky on it, I don't know if I'm right. Let's see if I'm right. But normally I am right because I'm thinking from first principles. I'm thinking Vance and Rubio. No, they have zero chance of winning the next election, 2028, if this war gets expanded. Everyone hates this war, unless you're somehow involved there. But every normal American thinks, what the hell are you doing? If you win quickly, they took out the Ayatollah. If they would stop the war now, it's all fine. Of course, if you go all in and would win, that would maybe also be fine. But when has that ever happened in the history of American foreign adventures? Never. America never won a war since World War II, which we all know America didn't really win. Russia won the war for America. They took all the losses. They destroyed Germany. So there is no track record of the United States winning ever a war. They lost Vietnam. They lost Iraq effectively. They lost Afghanistan effectively. Syria was a disaster. Libya was a disaster. Every single war was a disaster. And now Iran, much bigger than any of these countries, except for Vietnam maybe. And you can't win this thing. What you can do is take the win you have now. I said this repeatedly. You killed the Ayatollah, that's great. Now let's stop the war, declare a victory, and that's it. And all the people who are so strong, pro-American, who's not pro-American? But you have to be realistic. This is a 90 million people country. It's giant. It's protected by mountains. You can't go in and win this thing. It's going to be a complete disaster. You can also not bomb your way to winning. It never worked in the history of war. So bottom line is this war has to end unless there's some completely deranged thing going on there behind the scenes, which is possible. I still refute to believe that this is some form of political kamikaze suicide mission. There are too many people in the administration who are smart enough to not do that. And so in my opinion, they have to end the war. And if they end the war soon, I think the stock market is going to rally like crazy. Not so much because they're so happy that the war is over, but because we are in an incredible bullish environment for NVIDIA, for Tesla, for the Max 7, for everything that is AI driven. Not for the rest. The rest has problems, many problems. I will have another video on the labor market. There's massive disruption coming. But the Max 7 and the AI companies are set up for a complete win. So this all comes down to end this war and do not let it escalate. Because if you let it escalate, oil price will explode. By the way, that damages China. It benefits Russia. It benefits the United States as net oil producers. But that's also not worth this war. Doesn't damage China enough to do that. So that is my assessment of the situation. Tom Nash's explanation, no, that doesn't make any sense. This is not effective to damage China. You only damage China very indirectly by driving up the oil price like crazy, which benefits American producers and Russian producers. Saudi Arabia, of course, too. But it also damages the rest of the US economy dramatically. So it's not a win for the United States. Sure, it puts pressure on China because higher oil price is always bad. But as you see, China only derives, 18% of its total energy supply from oil. They have their coal, they have the natural gas, they have nuclear and renewables. So if you drive up the price for 18%, what does it even do? Even if you double the freaking oil price and drive it to $140, you only increase total energy costs for China by what? By 18%. I mean, is that great for China? No, of course it's bad, but you drive it up for everyone else even more. So, no. I think this war, if you follow the money and if you follow political rationale for the Republicans, and especially for Rubio and Vance who want to win in 2028, this war has to stop. It cannot be allowed to escalate. The whole Israel situation makes them look horrible and loses them half of the Republican support and all of the independent Democratic support. Losing blood, American servicemen and women, is a total, absolute no-no. And spending trillions, it will be trillions if this continues, is a total disaster. Everyone is tired of it. So I think they absolutely know that. They know the polls. There are all kinds of polls out. Why am I saying this? I don't want to be political. I don't want to trigger any one of you guys. If you have any irrational emos watching, which might happen when it comes to politics, understand I am not a partisan dude who is like on anyone's side here. Of course, I'm against war, but I'm just saying that because we need to predict reality. My best bet is these people are not delusional. Vance and Rubio are relatively smart. They're savvy operators. They understand we need to stop this war. We need to get an off-ramp, okay? I'm not saying that's easy. Who knows why this war was started? It's probably a giant mess. But if there's a will, there's a way. And I bet that they will find an off-ramp and mitigate the damage and the risk. Because this administration is surrounded by people, not just oil and arms lobbyists, but also Wall Street lobbyists, AI lobbyists, crypto lobbyists, and Silicon Valley lobbyists. And they all together are stronger than the oil and the arms lobbyists. And that is why I think they will convince the administration to stop this thing and deploy the taco strategy. And if I'm right, March is going to be bullish. If I'm wrong, I'm going to lose money. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully no one has emotional meltdowns when I talk about politics or Israel or Iran. I am neutral. I'm not trying to kill anyone. I just try to make sure all of you are positioned as well as possible to generate alpha. So I hope that was interesting. Sorry, Tom, if I had to correct some things. See you guys very soon.